When it comes to customer engagement in the energy and utility industry, there's a growing demand for solutions that provide real value for both the customer and the operator. And that's where mobile applications can play a huge role in that success. But of course, only when built correctly. So what are those right ways and best practices? That and much more are just ahead on this episode of Plugged In. Hello and welcome everyone to Plugged In, of course our energy and utility podcast that discusses the challenges, solutions, and latest technological innovations of the industry. In this episode, we tackle a trending topic in the world of the new customer-centric energy strategic model. Of course, that's customer-facing mobile applications. From the best practices when building an application to the key resources, to the key reasons why this is the way of the future, we will be discussing some very important and possible business-saving tactics on this episode. Now, joining me for this big talk, of course, we needed a big guest, and I'm very excited to welcome Patrik Larm, the Chief Revenue Officer at Bright, a digital service company that helps end users to better understand and control their electricity consumption, cost, and environmental impact. Something, of course, very relevant to the world today. Patrik, thank you so much for being here with me today. It's great to have you. Very much looking forward to discussing, what's a growing topic.
Thank you so much. Thrilled to be here. Very important topic. Also picking up in interest that we will be discussing shortly. So happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, let's get right into the meat of the conversation. Of course, we've seen this shift take place where suddenly customer engagement is a major priority in the industry.
Right.
Something that's maybe a little lagging behind the other industries, retail, logistics, supply chain. Everyone knows about supply chain now.
Sure.
But energy has sort of been that last bit. So why has that shift happened now, and what's caused it to really happen?
The short answer is churn. So the companies kind of understand that they are starting to lose clients. And I think in order to get some perspective with regards to this topic, taking a step back and also remembering that churn has always been a general concern of the business, right? However, with more educated consumers and rising prices, that becomes a very hard reality. And also if you add sustainability and the ESG agenda to this, you get a very interesting mix of topics. And I think when it comes to both consumption, I mean, everybody wants a low electricity bill, right?
Yeah.
But we also see a shift in trend where people want to make educated choices, smart choices. You want to be more environmental friendly. You want to reduce your CO2 and your environmental impact. And in order to do that, you need to transfer the use of energy to better hours of the day. And I think this requires insights and data, right? So, and the possibility to communicate, visualize these insights, and to provide guidance and recommendations. That's sort of the essence of the matter, I would say.
So you touched on it there. I think having the ability to obviously engage in real time will give both ends of the spectrum here a lot of insights. So we talk about mobile applications. That's
right.
Obviously something everyone has a mobile device, so it makes it very easy. What are some of those key reasons why it's a must-have, not only today, but to future-proof the operator?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, to be able to provide these insights, you need to have a channel that is prioritized by the end user, right? And using a mobile phone, you pretty much move into your customer's pocket, right?
Yeah.
And what we've seen along the line when helping our clients over the past couple of years, months, weeks, is that it gets a very high priority. So this is a channel that drives engagement. Why? Because of push notifications for once, right? And this is a very active medium. So let you give me an example. If you compare like a push notification to, let's say, an invoice or a newsletter, the difference in attention is remarkable, right? And I think if you add also being very relevant in content and very personalized into what each individual needs, coming back to data. Do you live in a house? Do you live in a flat? Do you have solar panels? Do you have an EV charger? How can I help you lower your consumption, which is good for your wallet, but also how can I help you to reduce your CO2 impact? And for the customer side of things, it becomes well, first of all, a matter of financials, but for the company, we see up to 40% decrease in churn just by engaging customers to the extent that they feel that they control their consumption and they can do something about it. And I think there the company has a very vital role to play, that you're actually there for your customer, you provide decent insight, you provide an alternative, and you leave it to the end customer to decide, do I want to do this or not? And like a really simple example could be, I have an electric car or an electric vehicle, I take off at 7 o'clock in the morning, I want the car to be fully charged, but I also want to do it smart. So I want to do it with a minimum climate impact, and I also want to reduce my energy costs. And that means then driving the consumptions to better hours. So by doing this, you get more and more engaged customers, and that creates loyalty. So we also see that the customer lifetime value increases sometimes from maybe 1 to 2 to 3 years, up to 4 to 6 to 7 years.
Oh, wow.
So it's really an investment that you do in your customer base, really.
On the tech savvy side of it, obviously the new generation coming up, we grew up with the technology, basically born with it. Has that had a significant role in our ability to want to engage, and then the environmental factor, of course, wanting to use less energy? That impacted things?
I think if you look at the millenniums and a lot of other generations, you can expect this to be in play today, right? So, for instance, like I'm from Sweden, right? Most people don't pay their invoices on paper anymore, right? So you're kind of moving away from that, and the same goes for a lot of other things. And the question I think you need to keep in mind is that a lot of times the consumer asks themselves, like, why isn't there an app for this? Why isn't there a smart solution for this? And to give you a good example as well is that if you send somebody via post that you should do your meter reading, I would ask the question, why can't I do this on my phone? Why can't I even take a picture of it and then have automated processes doing this for me, right? So I think you're definitely right that, younger generations, new generations, we expect this to be in play. And not only do we get disappointed nowadays when it's not in place, we actually get quite irritated from time to time as well. And at some point that could lead up to that you actually have a change of heart when it comes to your supplier.
Yeah, I was going to ask, if someone's going to, let's say they have purchased a new place and they need to get a new energy provider, how tech savvy does having a well solution or that ability to engage have a profound effect on whether or not they go for that provider or another one?
I think you're absolutely onto something there. And let's say you move into a house, you maybe have been thinking about getting solar panels. I saw the other day, I think it was 3 weeks ago, the European Commission made a suggestion that all new buildings post 2029 should have solar panels mandatory installed. There's going to be a need for smart solutions to control those solar panels, to do something with it. And if company A has the full stack of EV chargers, solar panels, you can do smart choices, green choices, and company B doesn't, I personally think that it will definitely have an impact on how attractive you become as a vendor and how much you as a person can identify with this company. And let's be honest, that's something that utility companies haven't been paying attention to previously, because the only thing you have been caring about is basically your grid and how many people who use that and how many kilowatt hours. You don't have that sort of, circling back to what you said earlier, this is normal within retail.
Right.
You can see the telco industry going through this change maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And now, even though you travel the world, you still get one invoice from your provider when you come home, just as a stupid example. But you need to be able to provide better customer experience, and you need to be able to drive that engagement. Otherwise, it's probably a game you will lose eventually.
Yeah, and I think lose quickly. I think in other industries, telco is a really good example where those who adopted early were actually able to leapfrog competitors they had no business leapfrogging.
100%.
And that's kind of the position we're in today with utility, where this is just starting, and those who take advantage have the opportunity to leapfrog competitors.
I think definitely so. And I think also innovation also becomes quite important to remember in this, because, I mean, let's face it, we have, with skyrocketing prices, you have the global crisis going on, inflation is coming, there's a war going on in Ukraine. that has a very severe impact on the energy market all across Europe and maybe also the globe. So I think the way we use energy and the way we consume, we just need to make a change there. We need to push it to other hours of the day. We need help to do that because nobody's going to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go out and plug in their car. That needs to be automated, right? Yeah. But I also think that the companies who actually take on this challenge and actually does something about it in order to also work with gamification and nudging, which is something that is very important if you want to change the behavior. I need to understand why I'm going to do this. I need to understand what it gives me. And for our customers, a very stupid example, or a simple example rather, is that if you have a geography that is very suitable for solar panels, and if you have a couple of houses using that as a technology already now, it's a very easy thing to say to a consumer that if you were to install solar panels, your energy consumption would be reduced by X. This would have the following impact on your bill, but also you will save CO2. But then you need to put that into context as well to say that this is the equivalent of maybe 80 flights back and forth from the US to Europe, right?
You need something measurable.
Exactly, that you can relate to.
Yeah.
Or driving a petrol car for, 400 miles or something like that, right?
Even just thinking about that, it would instantly put into perspective what you're doing, because it's home energy, or the energy you use is totally in a different world than in our heads, but really it's the same thing.
And it's truth be told, it's not the sexiest product out there. So, I mean, the only time we complain is when the lights go out and we have a power outlet. But the thing is that there needs to be an engaging part, there needs to be an experienced part involved in this, and you need to be able to meet this very educated consumer of tomorrow. And that requires quite a lot from the marketing departments and from the utilities companies, especially also from an innovation point of view. Naming just one of the examples could be like the virtual power plants. Like, how can we better work with controlling, distributing, leveling how we actually use our energy? And that's something that can only be done, in my opinion anyway, and I think a lot of people would agree, if you have accurate data to actually make that call.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's just really well into the next point I want to discuss, some of the less obvious benefits and opportunities that a mobile application on the customer side can actually give the operator. So we spoke about the benefits in general terms, but the specifics, less obvious things. The first things that come to my mind are obviously the ability to collect first-party data. That's becoming more valuable these days. More accurate data with meter readings, using some type of image recognition. These types of things are some of the benefits, but from your work and from what you worked with, what are some of those like non-obvious, like, hey, look, we also get this?
Yeah. I think, first of all, I already touched on churn, and that's where we see like a very big impact. And a study actually recently showed that a consumer who has an app, independently of which app it is, but you have an app from your utility provider, the churn risk on a yearly basis was 5%, compared to, I think it was close to 30% if you don't have the app. And the difference between those two is that you don't get that instant communication. You don't get that engagement that you actually interact with your provider. But it also has a very huge impact on customer service. And just to give you an example there as well, what we have seen over the past couple of years is that calls to customer service, the unnecessary calls, like, why is my bill so high? Yeah, because energy prices are up. That's something that you can very easily address with a push notification. You can say, hey, Patrik, the reason why your energy bill is 20% higher this month is because prices have increased with 20%. And a very concrete example is that I know a lot of governments have been working with supporting, due to the high energy prices, that you've gotten somewhere between 300 and 600 euros back on your bills, right? That also creates a lot of friction because everybody keeps calling their provider and say, why does this happen? Do I need to do anything? It's an unnecessary contact that you could easily avoid. So we see a huge impact on customer success and customer service as well. The other thing is to automate that process and use chatbots, for instance, instead, to take that sort of first wave. But I would say the majority of it is that consumers become more educated, they stay for longer, and they are more engaged. They're recurring users. Instead of paying your bill monthly, they come back 2-3 times a week, maybe even daily.
So they become invested in the process rather than just getting a bill once a quarter or once a month, is they really become part of the process, which makes them want to stay.
Exactly. And I think one thing that's very important there as well, what you mentioned, instead of waiting until the end of the month and just paying the bill, if you can get a forecast on a daily or a weekly basis saying that this is where you will land based on your consumption,
Even better.
then you can actually do something about it. And even better than if somebody says that if you were to shift your usage just from 6 to 8 to 9 or to 10 o'clock, this is the impact that you would have. And then you add weather data to it. So it's basically about educating and supporting your consumer as well.
Yeah, and bringing them into, the whole run of it. I love the ability to have an impact on actually energy usage, having that predictive model, but that can only come by something that's touching them, is already in their pockets.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And what we've seen, is just as a comparison, is that already after 6 months, the average is almost 30% of your entire customer base. And I would love to see any other medium who would actually reach 30% of the customer base over a period of 6 months, and even as high as 60 after 9 months. So it's definitely a very prioritized medium. You know, we're so used to push notifications. We're so used to use our phone. I think it's the last thing that people let go in the evening, and probably the first thing they touch in the morning, just to check what happened and everything. So to move into the pocket of the consumer is definitely key, but it also requires that you're very relevant and that you have a very to-the-point content. Otherwise, you become irrelevant and you will just discontinue the push notifications, for instance.
That's it. Look at how many apps you have on your phone.
Exactly.
How many do you just... But if it's related to like your actual dollars out of pocket,
Right.
there's more invested in actually like, hey, I should change this or go scan my meter or whatever I have to do.
100%.
Love it. So for operators listening, perhaps they have a mobile application, perhaps they're looking at getting one.
Yeah.
From your experience and the customers you work with, what are those important first steps in identifying what are we doing?
Right. Well, obviously, I'm a bit biased, so I'm gonna. I don't think that you should go out and trying to build something of your own, right? You know, there's no need to
Reinvent the wheel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I also believe that, you know, if you want to still do it yourself, you need to start with the why. Like, so why are we doing this? What is it that my end customers want? And the only way you can know that is to interact with them, right? And to take measures such as NPS into play as well, and see what do my customers really think of me. So to start with the why am I doing this? What do I want to do? But you also need to be able to predict tomorrow, right? So what's going to be there tomorrow? And for the past couple of years, that's the only thing we've been doing. We've been interacting with energy companies, their end customers, in trying to figure out what do they want, why do they want this, what do they need, and then to be able to try to predict tomorrow as well, so that you could actually drive that innovation and add more and more functionalities, content that you know for a fact will be used by the end consumers. So I think it starts with the why, such, you know, as a lot of things do. You need to understand why we're doing this and what you want to achieve.
Is that a step that you would advise operators to look at before coming to an agency or before coming to someone like you? Or do you want to work with them through that process?
I think agencies are great, right? Mm-hmm. But the delivery is more or less a one-off, right? So you deliver an app, it's sealed, packed in golden chains, everything is done. Here's done, right? What you should go for, in my opinion, and this is something that our customers would vouch for as well, you need a strategic long-term partner that's going to provide you with more and more updates over time, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel and build a new app, for instance, or a new logged-in version of my desktop or my pages, rather.
So that affects the customer experience.
Exactly. So it needs to be a partnership with that, you know for a fact that this is a future-proof solution. It's going to support my end customers today, tomorrow, but it will also support them in a period of 3 to 5 years.
Right. On the flip side of this, and you may have already touched perhaps the most prevalent one, but what do you see people do too often that they shouldn't? Is it trying to build something themselves? Is it just going with something off the shelf?
I think it's a combination of the both, right? Okay. And I mean, if you look at, this is very blunt, right? But if you look at it, as an energy provider and a utility company, you're not specialized in digitalization most of the time.
Yeah.
You are very skilled when it comes to operating grid, providing district heating, making sure that people have electricity and so forth. And that's where I think you try to make it appear as you know what you're talking about when it comes to providing something digital. And this is not just within the utility industry. I think this goes for a lot of industries. But the point is, I think you should try to get experts in who actually know what they're doing. And our company, for instance, we've been providing apps for almost 15 years, solely to energy companies, right? So we don't touch telco, we don't touch anything else. This is what we do. And I think you need that sort of partner who understands the market, who understands the customers, but you also need, because we're talking about engagement, customer experience, you need that behavioral science with how do people interact in a digital medium? What do they want to do? How should we build to support that journey? And I think too many companies out there, they try to make it a little bit too easy on themselves to say that we know our customers, we know pretty well what they want, we do what we have today, we improve it a little bit, and that's going to be fine, which is obviously not the case, right? So I think it kind of comes back to knowing the customers, what do they want, and to be able to support and help with that journey. And then you need a couple of very skilled partners and able to be able to provide that.
This brought up an interesting thought in my head because you've been doing this for so many years. Do you see a geographical difference in if we look at different areas of Europe, if we go to the Nordics, if we go North America? Yeah. Is there a big geographic difference in how operators think about this?
It is. And there's for two reasons. One is the use of smart electronic meters. Do you actually sit on this data or not, or do you need to do something in order to just get the data? And this is where I think, once again, it's about flexibility. You need to have a platform that scales depending on your need. Secondly, the other thing that is actually a major driver in this is the digital maturity of, let's say, the nation or the region. Sweden, for instance, I'm a Swede. We have over 80% have an electronic ID. We're a small country, but we have 8 million people doing more than 11 million transactions per day, identifying themselves in different apps, using their bank or whatever it may be. So I think that's something that you need to take into play as well. How mature is this nation as such when it comes to adapt to digitization and digital technology? So there are differences, yes.
But there's no one immune to this shift that's happened. There's no specific market that can go, nope, that's not going to touch us.
No, I don't think so. Eventually everybody needs to go this route. Yeah. And this is where I actually think, circling back to what I said earlier, that the European Commission made a decision that you need to have solar panels on all new buildings by 2029. This is where our politicians and our countries, they need to sit down and come together and agree on a standard as well. Because coming back to not reinventing the wheel, recently the European Union also agreed on one interface for charging for cellular phones, for instance. So it won't be differences going forward in the future. And I think standardizations enable to support innovation, to drive change, and to nudge. This is where the gamification comes again, right? I think you need a much tighter cooperation between like the industry, the elected, but also universities and schools that are driving a lot of the research and are going to be providing the workforces for tomorrow, right? You need to sit down and you need to agree on how to actually work this out going forward. So there are a few aspects that are sort of moving matter in this equation, right? But to answer the question, I think there's definitely differences between the regions, and some of it from time to time it kind of feels like we want the same goal, but we have very different means of how to get there, right?
This could be that single source of truth in all of that to bring everything together, because it all does come down to the customer.
I think so. And if circling back to telco once again, I know that the electricity business, they look a lot into what telco have done. And a couple of years ago, it was almost impossible to travel without coming home with a sky-high phone bill, right?
Yeah.
But now you can go pretty much any country. You will still get one bill from your provider when you get home. And it would be a nice thought to be able to drive your electric vehicle all across Europe. And no matter where you charge it, it's going to work out, and you're going to get one bill when you come home, right?
Yeah.
So this is once again about standardizing, and a lot of other industries have done it, and I think that there's definitely room for improvement when it comes to this industry, which is the case for a lot of industries. But once again, it comes back to what's the best experience for our customers, right?
Yeah, and identifying those hard trends, the things we know that are going to happen, which I love that you mentioned the political side and regulatory, because these are things we know are going to happen.
Yes.
So why not do something about it now rather than react once it's happened?
And I think, once again, circling back to, I'm not going to tell any politician how to do their job. They know that better.
That's a
probably.
bigger conversation.
Yeah. But I think if you look at, coming back to what I said earlier as well, if you're a utility provider today and you're thinking about getting an app, you need to start with, what do my customers need? Mm-hmm. And this is what I meant when it comes to this cooperation between elected and governmental and all the other instances and sort of the utility providers and the industry. You need to have that sort of profound understanding of what do customers need and how can we support that in order to make the world a little bit better place than it was when we entered.
That's all we can do. And we have the challenges ahead of us, but
exactly,
there has to be a solution. There will be a solution. It's a matter of picking the right one. No, brilliant way to end. Fantastic. Patrik, thank you so much for the discussion today. Really, I learned a lot about this, and I've already started to think about how I'm using energy and how much this could impact what I do personally. So really, really great. Appreciate the time. Any final notes before we end?
Just, very happy to be here. Thank you so much for it. And I think, there's definitely a change coming, and it's gonna be very bright.
Yeah, has to be bright. That's really well said. Subtle, but very well done. Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And for all of you watching, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Plugged In. Hopefully lots to take away. I know, as I mentioned, I've learned a lot today, and hopefully you've done the same, taking your notes, making that one step forward to a brighter future. And looking forward to, obviously, the discussion that we can have off of this. If you have any questions about anything you heard today, you want to add to the conversation, Patrik and myself will put our LinkedIn in the description of this video, so you can go ahead and reach out to us there, or go ahead and comment below, and we'll start a conversation there as well. So lots of options. Let's keep it going. And on the mobile applications front, something to look into, identify your customer, and go from there. Again, thank you so much for watching, everyone. My name is Mark Babin. We'll see you on the next episode of Plugged In.